Hey, ayos ba may logo na tayo? So I actually had that made. Just in case you're interested, I'm gonna put the social media handle of the artist down below. Anyways, welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, I'm Patrick. Welcome. Please don't hesitate to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Or if you do end up liking this video, also don't hesitate to click that thumbs up button as well. So for today, guys, we're not actually gonna do a review. Instead, we're gonna do a very basic guide on PC building because a lot of people actually approach me asking me kung paano ba build yung PC nila, ano bang kailangan nilang parts, magkano bang kailangan nilang ilabas na pera. So I realized that a lot of people are actually probably on the same boat since we're all working from home. So you're all probably trying to build your PCs just for gaming or even for work. I mean for work or even just for gaming. So baliktad. So anyways, just to be clear, I'm not in that type of business. So you may be asking, why should you trust me? Tama yan, if yun yung inisip nyo, you're on the right track because that's exactly what you need to do when you're buying your PC para hindi kayo mag-overspend or, believe it or not, mag-underspend. So with the help of a friend who's actually in that type of business and extensive research, I was able to make this video. So hopefully makatulong siya sa inyo. It's gonna be way longer than usual, but I'm gonna put some timestamps below so you can just get what you need from this video or you can watch the whole thing. It's up to you. So hopefully makatulong, guys. Enjoy the video. You may be wondering why I'm here. I switch places. It's not because it's hot or anything. It's actually because may kodigo ko, guys. I need to look at my screen every now and then because we're going to be talking about prices. We're going to be talking about specifications, PC components. So I need to be as accurate as possible. I know I said I did my research already and that I asked help from a friend who's in this business, but please do also do your research and triple check, quadruple check para mas accurate yung information na makukuha nyo after watching this video. So anyways, first of all, what do you actually need when you're building your PC? Ano ba yung mga parts na kailangan nyong bilhin? First, the CPU, that's 1. Second, the motherboard, that's 2. What naman? 2. So GPU is the 3, or the video card, that's the third part. Fourth is the RAM or the memory. Fifth, you need the power supply. 6, you need the case, obviously. And 7, you need the storage. So yun yung mga kailangan nyong bilhin for your PC, guys. So where can you actually get the cheapest parts? I'm gonna put the links, but I'm just gonna briefly mention it. First, the PC Hub, PC Option, JDM Techno Hub, DynaQuest, and of course Shopee or Lazada. You can actually get your parts the cheapest from Lazada or Shopee, but please be wary of scammers. And the warranty is not that easy to claim because it's Shopee and Lazada, may third party buy and everything else. So that's about it for where you can get your part. These are actually the cheapest sources already. So for the sake of this video or for the context of this video, I'm actually just gonna do an estimate of these prices so I can give you more or less an accurate information. Okay? Accurate information. Bakit sinasabi ko singular? Labo. Okay, so real quick before we start, I'm actually gonna make our lives easier and divide the video into different categories. So we have 2 categories, main categories, which are work and gaming. So for work, we have 2 different categories, subcategories. I mean, first is the basic type of work, office work, basic work lang. So pangalawa is yung heavy type of work, which means video editing, rendering, coding, and yung mga ganong klaseng trabaho. So for gaming, the other category, we have 6 subcategories. So we have 1080p gaming on basic games, 1080p gaming on AAA games, 1440p gaming on basic games, 1440p gaming on AAA games, and UltraWide gaming, and of course 4K gaming. So that's 6. That's it. So let's begin. Let's begin with work. Work, basic type of work, office work, and everything else. So the suggested CPU here is the Intel Pentium G6400, which is going to cost you around 3,000 pesos. That's going to be more than enough for your basic office work. And for the motherboard, the suggestion is the Gigabyte H410MH, which will cost you around 3,500 pesos. So for the GPU, you don't need a GPU for this type of PC. A CPU alone and the motherboard will be fine already. For the memory, the suggestion is just get an 8GB RAM or 16GB depending on what you need. But if you do decide to get an 8GB RAM, it's going to cost you around a little bit more than 1,000 pesos. For the power supply, just get a generic power supply. It's going to cost you less than 1,000 pesos. And for the case, just get another generic case, which will cost you around less than 1,000 pesos. For the storage, the suggestion is get a 128GB SSD where you can install your OS so that you can get your PC functioning fast enough for you to work efficiently. And that's about it. So that's going to cost you around 10,000 pesos. If you end up buying something way more expensive than this, and alam nyo naliloko kayo, or you're overspending for this type of build. So now we're moving on to the second subcategory for work, which includes heavy video editing, rendering, processing, coding, and the like. So if you're in that line of work, then you probably already know what I'm talking about. We'll begin with the CPU. Your CPU should have at least a computing power of at least 6 cores. So you prioritize that, and the suggested CPU for that is the AMD Ryzen 5 2600, which will cost you around 7,000 pesos. For the motherboard, just get the B450M, which will cost you around 3,500 pesos. And for the video card, it's going to be a GTX 1650S Super, which will cost you around 9,000 pesos. So before we even move on, guys, malaki talaga yung leap. Ngayon pa lang may GPU na and everything from coming off from the basic type of build because demanding talaga yung ganitong klaseng trabaho. So moving on, for the RAM, you might need the 16 gig. You're definitely going to need the 16 gig RAM, so that's going to cost you around 3,500 pesos. But of course, depending on your own needs, you can opt to upgrade to a 32 gig RAM later on. So for the power supply, just get a 550 watts power supply, which will cost you around 3,000 pesos, and just get a decent case with a good airflow, which will cost you around a little bit more or less than 2,500 pesos. For the storage, of course, you're gonna need to spend a little bit on this because you're probably gonna keep a lot of videos and everything else. So 500 gig of the fastest SSD, or not the fastest, but the fast kind of SSD, which will cost you around 3,000 pesos. So that's about it. It's a total of around 30 to 32,000 pesos. Malaki nga yung lead, guys. Ganun talaga pag ganun yung klaseng trabaho yung pinasukan nyo dahil mabigat sa GPU yun tsaka sa CPU. So on to our second category, first subcategory, which is gaming. I guess a lot of people are actually waiting on this. Gaming on 1080p basic games. By basic games, I mean Dota, LOL, Apex Legends. Yeah, Apex Legends, I guess, depending on the graphics, no? Genshin Impact, yung mga ganong klaseng games yung hindi sobrang demanding on graphics. So, let's begin. If you're gonna use it for primarily gaming, the suggested CPU is Intel Core i3-9100F. This means it doesn't have an integrated GPU on it, so it's gonna cost you way less money than getting one that has a GPU in it. So it's going to cost you around 3,600 pesos. And for the motherboard, you can get the H310ME. It's going to cost you around 3,300 pesos. And for the GPU, you can opt to get the GTX 1650S Super or the AMD equivalent of that, and you can get that for around 9,000 pesos. And for the RAM or memory, since a lot of games are actually quite demanding on memory nowadays, to be safe, you can get the 16 gig DDR4 RAM, which is going to cost you around 3,500 pesos. And for the power supply, just get a 550 watts power supply, which is going to cost you around 3,000 pesos. And for the case and fans, actually own preference lang naman to. Yung latter parts sa table na makikita nyo, own preference na lang to because it's how much you're willing to spend on these parts. So it depends on how much you're willing to spend on these parts. So for me, just get a decent case. In this case, just get a decent case. It's gonna cost you around less than 2,500 pesos. Just make sure it has good airflow. If you want to buy fans, go ahead. For storage, just get 128 gig SATA SSD where you can install your OS, and get the 500 GB HHD where you can install your games. This is gonna cost you around 28,000 pesos. Again, more or less estimate lang to. You can adjust, upgrade, or downgrade depending on your needs. So now, we're gonna talk about gaming, 1080p still, but on AAA games. AAA games are just heavy or demanding games in general. I'm talking about Horizon Zero Dawn, The Witcher 3, Modern Warfare, Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone, yung mga ganong klaseng games, Control, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. So for the CPU, the suggested CPU here is get a 4-core 8-thread CPU, and my personal suggestion, and along with my friend's suggestion, it's a Ryzen 3300X 4-core 8-thread CPU, which is going to cost you around 6,500 pesos, or get something in that range. It's up to you. Gigabyte B450M for the motherboard, which is going to cost you around 3,500 pesos. And for the GPU, just upgrade from GTX 1650S to GTX 1660S Super. It's going to cost you around 13,000 pesos, a 4,000 pesos difference from the GTX 1650 Super, but with an increased performance of around 20 to 30 FPS depending on the games that you're going to play, which is huge for AAA games, by the way. So for the RAM, definitely you're gonna need the 16 gig RAM. It's gonna cost you around 3,500 pesos. And for the power supply, just get a true rated, reliable 550 watts power supply to power up your 1660 Super. It's gonna cost you around 4,000 pesos, more or less. And for the case and fans, just get just get your own case with a good airflow with fans. Up to you, your own preference. But for this video, I'm gonna put it around 3,000 pesos. And for the storage, my own personal suggestion is just get a 256 gig SSD where you can put your OS and some of your favorite games, and get a 1 TB HDD where you can put the games that you don't play as much. It's gonna cost you around 40,000 pesos more or less, guys, for this build. Now, sa mas ma-intense na tayo, 1440p but still basic gaming. Not sure why people do that, but still we're gonna talk about it just in case you're not into the AAA games. So, the CPU suggestion for here for this type of build is the Ryzen 5 3600 6-core 12-thread, or the Intel equivalent of that. Importante, 6 cores tsaka 12 threads yung ginagamit natin yung CPU here. So it's gonna cost you around 11,000 to 13,000 pesos depending on which one you decide to get. For the motherboard, you can get the B550M or the Gigabyte B460M. It's gonna cost you around 7,000 pesos or 6,500 pesos. So, yung motherboard depende talaga yan sa decision nyo sa CPU tsaka GPU. But here are my own personal suggestions, no? For the graphics card or the GPU, you can get an RTX 2060 or the AMD equivalent. It's really up to you. I think the AMD equivalent for that is the RX 5600. No? It's gonna cost you around 16,000 pesos. I'm not sure if I already said that a few seconds ago, but yeah, 16,000 pesos. And for the RAM and memory, definitely 16 gig. 3,500 pesos yung price. And for the power supply, get a 550 minimum to a 650 watts true rated power supply, which is going to cost you a little bit more than 4,000 pesos as well. Again, with the case and the fans, that's really up to you. For the sake of this video, I'm going to put it at around 3,000 pesos. And for the storage, it's really up to you as well. I just have my own personal suggestions, as you can see, which is going to cost you around 4,200 pesos, 500 gig of HDD, and 256 gig of SSD. So it's gonna cost you around a total of, estimate lang 48 to 52,000 pesos to game on 1440p basic games, or even sometimes a little bit more than basic. Moving on to the even more intense category. So the 1440p resolution AAA games categories. The suggested CPU here is the same actually, the Ryzen 5 3600 6-core 12-thread or the Intel i5 10th gen, which is going to cost you around 11,000 to 13,000 pesos. Now for the motherboard, I have the same suggestions from the last category, the B460M or the B550M, 7,000 to 6,500 pesos. For the GPU, dito nag-iiba because mas mataas yung mas demanding yung games na nalaroin natin. So I suggest an RX 5700 XT, which is good enough for 1440p gaming, and for the RTX equivalent or for the NVIDIA equivalent, the RTX 2070 Super. This is going to cost you around 22 to 25,000 for the GPU alone. For the RAM or the memory, get a 16 gig at the very minimum, or 32 gig. That's up to you. For the 16 gig, it's going to cost you around 3,500 pesos. And for the power supply, definitely you have to get something. You have to get a 650 watts true rated PC, which will cost you around more than 4,000 pesos. And for the case and fans, it's up to you guys. If you want to buy coolers as well, it's really up to you guys. But for the sake of, for the context of this video, I'm gonna put it a little bit more than 3,000 pesos. And for the storage, again, own preference, but again, as you can see in the table, I'm suggesting a 256 gig SSD and a 1 TB hard drive to go along with it, so you can put most of your games there. It's going to cost you around 5,500 pesos. So the total estimate for this build, it's going to cost you around 58,000 to 60,000 pesos, or even more. You can go less, depende talaga yan sa'yo. Upgrade or downgrade depending on your own needs and preference. This will allow you to game in 1440p, decent frame rates kapag AAA nilalaro nyo. Not even decent. Good frame rates, okay? So yun lang yun for this category. Okay, so for the ultra-wide or for the 3440 times 1440p 21:9 aspect ratio, I'm gonna suggest the same exact thing that I just talked about, because honestly, yung build na yun, kaya na niya mag-game at around 60 to 70 FPS or 50, yung sobrang baba, 50 to 70 FPS on AAA games or demanding games. And definitely, you can game on it on super good frame rates for basic games. So, difference lang, syempre, yung monitor mo mas wide, mas maraming real estate na kukunin niya. So, mas demanding siya sa graphics card and processor, definitely. It's gonna cost you around 58 to 60,000. The same lang talaga. But if you're if you plan to spend on more, then you can get an RTX 2080 Super or 2080 Ti, which I personally don't suggest because out na yung next gen video cards, and you can get it for way cheaper than the RTX 2080 Ti with more performance. So let's move on to the 4K gaming. Sama ko na to dito kasi I'm not gonna use the table for it anymore. I'm not gonna talk about it in the detail. We're just gonna go on it briefly, go over it briefly because I personally don't know a lot about it since I don't have my own build. But I do know that if you're gonna game on 4K resolution, you do need the next generation video card. So please don't buy the 2080 Ti because it's a waste of money. You just have to wait a few months for the stocks to be available for the next gen cards, and it's really everything else is relative. Everything else is your personal preference, but you do need a good CPU to go along with your next gen video card. So, I mean, AMD released also their new CPUs, so it's really up to you. Yun lang naman, guys. So that's gonna be the end for the categories. So I understand that a lot of people have different opinions on this. Some people might even know better. So please don't hesitate to comment down below if you have better suggestions because that's actually the purpose of this video. That's the goal para mas ma-inform mga tao. So just comment down below if you do know some good information about builds and you think you can have or you can suggest better specifications or hardware than what I just said. So that ends our guide. So if you're interested in buying a PC, you just have to remember that you have to know what you're getting depending on what you need for work or what you need for your games. So that's actually the most important part because you might overkill or overspend if you don't know what you're getting. Hence, I made this guide. Hopefully, nakatulong ako. And if you're interested, actually, speaking of that, if you're interested in buying your PC or building your PC, like I said, I asked help from a friend to make this happen, to make this video happen. Don't hesitate to message me. Shoot me a message through my social media pages or even just comment down below and I can refer you to my friend. So you can ask help from him to buy your PC or to build your PC. That's about it, guys. Hopefully nakatulong ako. Gentle reminder lang, lahat ng sinabi ko, it's just a guide para alam ng mga tao saan sila nanggagaling kapag bibili sila ng PC and they already have an idea of like where to start or where to begin. Like for example, if I suggest a certain GPU and you find out that it's too powerful for you, then downgrade. If it's too weak, then upgrade. Depende talaga sa budget. I'm just giving some guides para alam ng mga tao saan sila magsisimula. So, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope I was able to help. Thank you.